The judge in the hush money case against President-elect Trump is delaying his decision on whether to sentence Trump on his conviction or dismiss the case. Trump had asked for that verdict to be overturned or thrown out due to the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. That decision is now scheduled for next Tuesday. Let's bring in senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky, who's outside that courthouse, along with senior reporter Catherine Falders and ABC News legal contributor Kim Whaley for more. Aaron, the Manhattan DA's office signaled that it needs more time to consider how to proceed now that Trump is the president-elect. So what's the latest there? How is that factoring into all of this?
For weeks, we had expected Judge Juan Merchan to decide whether the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling would apply to President-elect Trump's criminal hush money case, where he was convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. He had signaled that decision was coming today, but in the last several days, in secret, not publicly, but in secret, the lawyers for Trump and the Manhattan DA's office had been going back and forth on email trying to delay any decision because of the outcome of the election. We didn't see the full correspondence, but we saw enough of it to realize that Trump's people asked for a delay. The DA's office agreed, saying that these are unprecedented times, and the judge has now given the DA's office until November 19th to decide how they may want to proceed, whether they're going to make any particular recommendations now that Trump is president-elect.
So, Kim, what does the judge need to consider here? Because this whole thing is unprecedented.
Well, the judge, of course, has the sentencing question before him, but I think there's a broader issue, presumably, that the Trump team is trying to push forward, which is that somehow now that he's been elected president, the voters have spoken and the indictment itself should be dismissed. The entire case should be dismissed. That's, I think, elevated beyond just immunity. And we know Jack Smith is also asked for a pause and received a pause in the January 6th case before a federal judge, Judge Chutkan in Washington, D.C. The Justice Department has a separate question, that is the internal memo basically stating you don't indict or prosecute sitting presidents. So I think we'll have to see what's specifically in these papers, but they're essentially arguing this changes the entire game here with all of these cases.
And Catherine, where does this leave President-elect Trump's other outstanding cases?
Yeah, well, this conviction likely remains his last legal hurdle before the inauguration. We know in Georgia that's been tied up in all sorts of delays for over a year now. And as Kim just alluded to, Special Counsel Jack Smith has essentially been in these talks with the Department of Justice, according to our sources, about how to wind down those two convictions there as it relates to Trump's election subversion case in Washington, D.C., as it relates to January 6th. And then, of course, the classified documents case, which the judge threw out. And it's now at the circuit level. So we know that those talks are ongoing. So essentially all of his other cases are really not going anywhere before he attends the inauguration.
Aaron, what are you watching for as the judge considers this decision?
Well, I'm interested in what prosecutors are going to say. Are they going to, they've already said they don't believe the presidential immunity decision applies to this case because Trump was a private citizen when he paid off Stormy Daniels. Are they now going to suggest that sentencing get put off for 4 years? Are they going to agree that the case simply cannot go forward because Trump is president-elect? There aren't that many options to consider. Prosecutors are undoubtedly going to say the conviction should stand, but they may well agree that sentencing just isn't practical.
Catherine, what would that look like? There's a potential for prison time here. What happens if you sentence a president-elect to do time behind bars?
Oh, gosh, I honestly don't even know what that would look like here. I think there's a lot of unprecedented circumstances. I don't know. I know that jail time here has been something that seems unlikely, and who knows whether or not when the judge is making this calculation, if he's taking into consideration, of course, that Trump is now the president-elect. So as we've been talking a lot about here, and as even the papers say in other arguments, this is truly unprecedented. And if there is a sentencing, which potentially that would get delayed with this week delay, if you will, we'll obviously see what happens there. But not really sure how that would look if the judge were to sentence the president-elect to any jail time.
Kim, what sort of precedent could this decision set, whatever it is?
Well, I agree. I mean, it's the only case probably given the immunity decision that unless there's a new configuration on the Supreme Court will ever go forward for crimes committed by a sitting or former president. So Merchan knows this is the one and done. I think it's highly unlikely he'll disturb the actual verdict. I think it's highly unlikely he'll impose any kind of jail time. So the question would be, does he impose, some kind of probation or something else, or as indicated, hold it for 4 years? The Jack Smith is a little bit different because there is an option for him to submit a report to the United States Congress. That's required under the special counsel regulations. The time is ticking, and he could decide, or DOJ could decide, the American people needs a record of the evidence gathered in the January 6th case, and even more importantly, the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, because he's indicated that much of that information is classified, and we in this moment don't know whether Donald Trump in that connection actually threatened national security. So I think really the legacy of the January 6th and the Mar-a-Lago cases are much more important than what's before Judge Merchan, although he is going to have to decide how do you balance the rule of law determined by a jury against this unprecedented notion of a man with 34 felony convictions now being elevated to the most powerful position in the land, if not the world, armed with a decision by the United States Supreme Court that crimes committed using official power, which we don't know how that would have been parsed here, but crimes using official power in the White House are above the law and immune from any civil or criminal immunity.
All right, Aaron, Catherine, Kim, thank you all.